Well, staying in the college game, this summer recruiting circuit is going to look a whole lot different this year amid the pandemic, with likely no in-person recruiting happening at all. The NCAA's D1 Council Coordination Committee extended the current recruiting dead period through July 31st this week. That means there will be no live in-person scouting or recruiting happening until at least August. The committee plans to revisit the rule in late June or early July to determine if it needs to be extended even longer. For more, we bring in Inside Lacrosse's Director of Recruiting and High School Content, Tys Xanders. Ty, this is your bread and butter. And so this summer just became a lot less interesting for you, or I guess maybe even more interesting, just in terms of like how you take it. How do you take this dead period being extended all the way through July?
Yeah, I think in some ways it was a curveball, but this whole thing has been, a curveball and a wild card. Didn't see it coming. But with this, I think it was inevitable. But, when it's finalized and everything and you hear it, it's, still shocking to a degree, because the summer looked very different as opposed to previous years. But I think that everyone will do the best they can to adapt and find a way to get recruited and get these kids homes. So I really think that there are enough smart people and that have all the best interests in mind that they'll make it happen and make this work. To adapt like we all have to.
Obviously, there's been a lot of downtime for some of these college coaches, considering they didn't have half a season, and usually this is about the time they're starting to really dig into recruiting. How do they handle this in terms of trying to evaluate these next couple of classes?
Yeah, I think it's really just adapting to the technology and all that. It's spending a lot of time watching film. I know that, talking to a lot of these guys, we're all doing a lot of the same things, watching a lot of film and talking to the phone a lot, and trusting your contacts and, trusting the film that you have, I think just taking advantage of those resources. So, that's something that I think will continue to happen. Whether it's a live stream or on demand. I think that everyone feels like we'll go the film route if we can.
When you look at the classes, early recruiting obviously had its flaws, but in one case, like if this would have happened, you would have had to have watched some kids, whether they were freshmen or sophomores in high school already. Who's impacted the most by this, and how much have these coaches seen some of these younger classes in person?
I think it's pretty devastating for the 21 class, and that's there's been so much talk about, how hard the 20s get hit, and I couldn't agree more. That's who I feel the worst about, the worst for this whole thing, missing your senior year, your senior season, an extra year, all these college seniors, and everything up in the air. For the 21s, so many players don't have a home yet. So to think that things just got more difficult for these rising seniors, I think that's pretty tough news. But like I said, I think that everyone will find a way. These 21s may wind up in places they didn't think they'd wind up. There's no doubt about that. But for the 22s, I think they'll find a way, and you'll push it back a little bit. But I think that coaches, are just starting to get acquainted with this 22 class, through film, because there weren't many tournaments where I think they've focused on 22s in the past. So it's still very, very new for everybody.
For somebody who's maybe unfamiliar with how this process goes, obviously there's always been film available for these coaches to watch. What's the biggest thing they can see in terms of watching a player in person, and because there's a reason they go to all these tournaments, as opposed to when you just get the highlight reel from somebody?
I think it's a great question. I think, it has its advantages and disadvantages. I know that, for some of us with, ADD, it may be good to have the film and be home and, not with a million people and all that. But, I know that I love to, I love to see all these games in person, and everyone loves to see it in person because you get a good sense of, the kind of size and athlete these players are. I know Dave Connolly used to always say, I want to be down there and smell the horses, as opposed to up in the press box. So, I think there's certainly value on both sides, but coaches will purchase their film or find a live stream and put that in the smart TV and watch it and take notes that way. So I really feel, I can't stress that enough. I think everyone will adapt, and there will be, a way to watch these kids. As long as it's a safe playing environment. I don't know what that'll look like, and none of us do. But there's no doubt that we hope that there can be some level of testing and certainly safety. I think all those precautions will be made in order to create an environment for these kids to get recruited this summer.
Appreciate the time. Keep up the good work with all the stories you're breaking on IL. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Travis. Great to see you. Take care.